And yeah, without further ado, let's make a start. So, if you are joining for the first time, my name is Jason Swan. I'm a well, kind of have a number of hats these days, but I'm based in the south of Portugal. I'm a qualified financial planner here, and I'm also a specialist with regard to the Golden Visa program in Portugal. And really, I like to think I'm a relatively handy person to ask any questions around immigration to Portugal, whether it be kind of money matters coming into Portugal, or just generally living in the country. You know, I've been here now for not far off 5 years. Previous to Portugal, I was in Spain for 4 or 5 years. And then, if you haven't noticed from my accent, I was in Manchester, where I was raised and born in the northwest of England, previous to Spain. But I now find myself working exclusively with investors looking to qualify for the Golden Visa program in Portugal, having submitted now close to over 400 applications just in the last few years alone, where we've seen a real spike in applications, especially over the last 12 months as well. Ever since, I would say, around about November time, 2024, there's been a 300% uplift in applications, in particular from America. I don't know what happened in November last year, but something seems to have sparked more interest in talking about a plan B, which is a common phrase these days, but thinking more about life outside of where you live at the moment and thinking of other options perhaps in Europe. But all in all, we're very well versed. We are the number one provider of the Golden Visa service for Portugal. We've now done over 10% of the world's Golden Visa applications, and we maintain a 100% success rate as well. The criteria, as you will find out shortly, for the Golden Visa is actually quite straightforward, unlike other visa routes. But nonetheless, we continue to have an exemplary record to ensure that everything runs smoothly, and of course, our clients are successful. I'm going to cover off, like I said, quite a lot of topics at a relatively fast pace this afternoon, or this morning, depending on where you are. If you do have any questions, just drop them in the Q&A as we go. I'll try to get to a Q&A for kind of half past, quarter to the hour, to make sure we cover as many as possible. Naturally, I'll probably cover off the majority of questions as we go through. But if I do miss anything, or if you would like any personal information, or personalized information, should I say, you can get in contact directly. You'll have an email from my associate Dean and myself from today. Yeah, like I say, you're welcome to book some time in or ask any questions in private as well. So let's get stuck in now, just to kind of provide an overview as to what exactly it is that Holborn does. It is very much a one-stop shop to provide everything that's needed to acquire the Golden Visa. And there is, of course, quite a lot of work involved, and a lot more work than you may expect. But in order to successfully receive the Visa cards, it all begins with the basics of applying for Portuguese tax numbers. We also need to set up a Portuguese bank account as well. There'll also be discussions around investments and finding a suitable investment in line with any investment preferences that you have. There'll be a law firm as well, which will submit, of course, the applications. There will be the tax office for a mandatory tax declaration each year. There will be the immigration office for, of course, the biometrics appointment, and lots of other work to look forward to. The goal really for Holborn is to keep all of this work as easy as possible, and to work as your primary point of contact really throughout the visa application. And we facilitate all these different moving parts on your behalf and keep you up to date along the way. You have myself as the primary point of contact. You have, of course, a case manager working alongside myself as well. And then, yes, you have, of course, all the support of Holborn throughout the process. If you do get a chance, you can feel free to check out some of our client reviews. You can certainly put my name into Google, and you shall see lots of content to help with your due diligence. If you haven't had enough already after today's presentation. So before we jump into Portugal, for those that are not necessarily hook, line, and sinker on the Portugal program, it is one of many programs that Holborn offers. If you are thinking simply of a plan B, not necessarily to Portugal, or a second residency, moving your tax residency, or whatever it may be, again, feel free to send in an email and we'll be happy to guide you to information on other programs as well to help with your relocation or plans as they may be. If you would like to stay up to date with the latest news specific to the Portugal program, which is an ever-changing topic, it's hard to keep up with all the government updates these days, but you can now register with the WhatsApp group as well. So to the best of our ability, we shall share relevant information around the up-to-date government releases, any changes in law, any kind of new qualifying investments that come available in Portugal. And also, yeah, just any generally need to know information. We'll try to make sure you get that quickly as well. But without further ado, let's talk about Portugal, my favorite topic. So what is the Golden Visa? Let's start with the basics. So if you don't already know, the Golden Visa is kind of like a VIP pass to Portugal, where you can live up to 365 days, you can work, you can simply retire, you can study, you can do whatever you like, really. You have all the same benefits of being a Portuguese citizen, apart from you cannot vote and you cannot run for president. However, political aspirations aside, you get access to a lot of benefits, which we'll go on to in a moment. But the visa itself lasts for 2 years, and you can renew the visa for as many times as you like. But after 5 years have passed, you can apply for permanent residency. And as it stands, you can also apply for citizenship as well. When you get the permanent residency, you no longer need to remain invested. There's no more visa renewals. And then you have permanent rights to reside in Portugal. With citizenship, the same again. However, those rights then extend to other EU countries as well. Portugal is, of course, part of the EU, and by having a Portuguese passport, it is very much like getting 27 passports all at the same time. But that ultimately is the treasure at the end of the rainbow, as it were, and Portugal's program remains the number one pathway to Europe, really, by quite some distance. Since the program was launched back in 2012, there have been literally tens of thousands of applications submitted, and yeah, it is now the only country that allows, or should I say, offers a route to getting a European passport without having to live in the country, which sounds pretty wild, really, when you think about it. But you don't have to relocate to Portugal to get a passport with the Golden Visa. It's surprising how many clients actually I speak with have never even been to the country, and some don't actually plan to move to Portugal, but see it very much as a path to getting a passport with a view to kind of make that decision later on. You can start the clock ticking to getting that passport without deciding to move to Portugal just yet, or to any country for that matter. The part that makes this program particularly unique is that the minimum stay requirement is only 2 weeks in every 2-year period. You do not need to become tax resident. You do not need to have a property in Portugal. You don't even need to have an address in Portugal. As long as you follow the criteria that we'll look at in a moment, you can stay exactly where you are and have the visa and ultimately the passport as something for the future, should you wish. But if you can't wait for that time, then of course you get to live in Portugal pretty much as soon as your application is submitted, should you so wish, or the benefits of the visa will kick in as and when you receive the visa card, which we'll come on to in a second. But there you go. That is the visa. Without talking at you too much, that is all built in to the Golden Visa. It is the only type of visa for Portugal that doesn't require you to live here for at least 6 months per year and become tax resident. Now, it is an investment visa, which we're going to cover off in quite some detail this afternoon. However, just to give you a snapshot of the current minimum capital thresholds as of today's date, they are as follows. Now, the lowest amount of capital you can use to receive this VIP pass is to make a donation to the Portuguese government with €250,000. That is the lowest category. Investments, all investments, again, which we'll come on to shortly, all investments require at least 500,000 to be invested. However, as of today's date, there are some investment providers in Portugal that will offer an upfront return and also in some cases a loan facility as well, which allows the 500,000 to be invested and qualify for the visa, but only with 325,000 up to 399,000 of your own capital, which can be useful if you are, selling existing assets in order to generate the money to be invested. But that's the current thresholds. Like I say, it is important to note that to qualify with an investment, 500,000 has to be invested, but in some occasions that some of that capital can come from other sources. Hopefully that's nice and clear. And coming back to, I think we've covered some of this. I should switch these slides over actually. Last minute preparation, bad form of format, but coming back to the program briefly, as we mentioned before, with the visa, you can qualify for the education and healthcare services in Portugal. Portugal has I think it's the fourth best rated public healthcare system in the world. Again, we have clients that have done this for that benefit only, by comparison to paying for private medical and private healthcare in other parts of the world, which can be very expensive. Actually accessing the public healthcare system for free in Portugal can be a big plus. Also, there are some favourable tax treatments as well. I'm not going to talk too much about taxation this evening, but I will be hosting some events over the next few weeks talking around the NHR 2.0 program, also how to structure your investments and income and assets in line for changing your tax residency to Portugal as well. But for now, just know that there are some tax incentives depending on your circumstances that may be an additional incentive to choose Portugal. But the best part, of course, is you get to live in the country. You get 300 days of sunshine each year. You really don't need much convincing for Portugal outside of being able to live here. I am slightly biased because I do live here, but I have chosen Portugal over pretty much anywhere in the world. I'm fortunate enough to be able to work pretty much anywhere in the world, but Portugal for me ticks the most boxes. And I'm down in the south, a little town called Albufeira, where it's supposed to be supposed to be warmer in the south. It's not too warm today, but you have Lisbon, which is the city centre, and Porto, which tend to be the three most popular destinations for those that are immigrating to Portugal. If you are looking to relocate full time, I would say it's generally a good idea maybe to think about taking your time before jumping in 2 feet first and buying a property. You'll find in Portugal that when you are buying a property to live in, that you pay quite a lot of taxes up front with the purchase, and it can become expensive if you buy in Lisbon and then decide you want to move down to the Algarve, for example, or end up in Porto. I ended up somewhere completely different to where I thought I was going to settle in the end. So renting a property, getting around the country and traveling a bit before kind of setting the anchor down is good practice. But again, it's important to note that you don't have to move to Portugal or make these decisions just yet for the Golden Visa. You don't even need to have an address in Portugal to do this program. But if you are relocating, just have that in mind. And in my opinion, you're not going to go too far wrong wherever you end up. But they're all, different parts of Portugal are wildly different. But anyway, enough of the geography lesson. Let's come back to what I do know a lot about, and that is the the qualification routes for the visa now. There are 5 ways you can qualify. Number 1 is you can create 10 jobs. You can invest into or create a business that will create 10 jobs, and that will be rewarded with a golden visa. The second option and third option is to make some form of donation. If you're feeling generous and you'd like to give 500,000 or 250,000 to the government, they will be very happy to award you with the golden visa for your generosity. And the investment options, which we're going to focus on this evening, is options 4 and 5. Number 4 is to choose a collection of qualifying investment funds or venture capital funds, again from a 500,000 euro contribution, or the option to invest into a Portuguese company or into some form of a private equity, again with 500,000, on the basis that, again, similar to point 1, jobs are created in Portugal or maintained as a result of said investment. But those are the 5. Property investment is no longer permitted. That was removed back in 2023. But there are still 5 active categories to qualify for the visa. So again, I'm conscious I'm going through at a relatively fast pace. Hopefully that will make sense. Apologies if I've missed anything there, or you have any questions, just drop them in and I'll be sure to come back to them shortly. So as far as who can qualify, it's very straightforward, this one. Unlike other visa routes to Portugal, there are no age restrictions, there's no income requirements, you don't have to work in a particular industry. There is just really 4 rules. First of all, you cannot already have a European passport. If you do, you don't need the golden visa anyway. The second point is you must have a clean criminal record, or at least a relatively clean criminal record. We have had success for clients that have had misdemeanors from many years or an earlier life, but in the main, we will need to do a criminal record certificate or request a certificate on your behalf. You need to, of course, make an eligible investment or contribution to the Portuguese economy, as we've covered. And lastly, the worst part of the deal is you've got to come to Portugal. But you only need to be in Portugal for 14 days every 2 years. And it's important to highlight at this point that you do not need to become a tax resident. You do not need to have an address. You do not need to live in Portugal. As long as we can show that you have been in the country for 14 days every 2 years, that will suffice to renew the visa for as long as you wish. But yeah, that's it. That's all really. Like I said, the success rate is exemplary high because we check these things before you get into any investing or submitting any applications. And of course, we can make sure what you invest into will meet the criteria for the government. We can make sure that you personally meet the criteria for the government as well before getting involved in the process. But if you tick those boxes, you are good to go. Now, as far as family, you can also include as many family members on the same application as you wish. So with the same donation or the same investment, you can add as many family members as you like. However, the family members must be deemed as some type of dependent in order to be included. Now, dependents can be either a spouse, whether married or unmarried is fine, as long as you live at the same address, that will suffice. You can include parents over the age of 65 without any proof of dependency required. And you can also include children, A, up to the age of 21 without any proof of dependency needed, or B, above the age of 21, as long as we can show some form of dependency, which more often than not will come in the form of being in further education. And as long as we can show an enrolment certificate to evidence that the children are still in education, again, that will suffice to keep them as a dependent. You do need to know that we have to show dependency above that age, not just at the application stage, but also at the renewal stages as well. If you are thinking that maybe children are too old, it would be worth a conversation to see how to structure the application. What we can do as well is change who is the main applicant. So perhaps if you are thinking your children are too old, but you happen to be over the age of 65, it may make more sense to add your son or daughter as the main applicant in order to then add you as their dependents. And that may also be a way to add your grandchildren to the application as well. But of course, we'll talk through these conversations on, during one-to-one meetings, and I'll help you understand how to get the most bang for your buck, as they say. But otherwise, everyone follows the same process. Everyone needs to come to Portugal. Everyone has the biometrics. And everyone will need to learn Portuguese as well, should they wish to acquire permanent rights or citizenship in Portugal. So there you go. And now, as far as the process, a bit of a busy slide, but I'll give you a general overview on this because a lot happens behind the scenes to get from where we are now to receiving the visa. The step one, the first part of progressing to a visa, once you've listened, of course, to the information today, is if you haven't already done so, is to book some time in to speak with myself, and we can go through more personalised information and go through any questions that you may have. Once you wish to begin the process, it will all start with applying for your tax numbers in Portugal. I'm not going to try to pronounce what NIF stands for. Victor told me that last night, who is Brazilian and speaks perfect Portuguese. But for just the English speakers on the meeting, we'll just refer to it as a NIF number at this stage. But that is your Portuguese tax numbers, and you need that before you can really do anything here in Portugal. But once we have those, we can then submit an application to apply for a bank account in Portugal. And we can use any bank account, ultimately, as long as the bank can assist with your personal circumstances and nationality, and also provide accounts suitable for a Golden Visa application. Other than that, the bank can take a bit of time, often 6 to 8 weeks, depending on the bank that we use. Whilst we wait for that to be open, we will start to gather all the documents that we need. So my team will advise which documents to share with us, things like copies of passports, proof of address, birth certificates for children, criminal record certificates or FBI reports. Again, we will help you to gather this information as well. We hold your hand right throughout this. So although there is a lot involved, just know that this is more for us to worry about rather than yourself. But we'll gather all those documents over the time that we wait for the bank account. As soon as the bank account's opened, we can then submit your application, really. You can send the investment money to your new Portuguese account as soon as it's open. With the help of the attorneys, you'll then complete the chosen investment, and the application will be submitted to AIMA. And AIMA is the immigration office for Portugal. And AIMA will be the entity that will check that we've ticked all the boxes. So the investment meets the criteria. They'll make sure that you have the clean criminal record. We will prepare the application on your behalf, and of course make sure that it all goes to plan. Once that's done, the clock is then ticking. It's a very important day, the submission day, because that is the day that the clock will begin to tick for when you can apply for permanent residency, and again, as it stands, apply for a passport as well. I say as it stands because when the clock starts ticking for the passport may change depending on discussions over the coming weeks with Parliament. But as it stands, the clock, worst case scenario, will start ticking towards permanent residency, which happens after 5 years, and currently the passport as well. And then, yeah, that is also the day that you can live in Portugal, should you wish. Or if you can't wait for the visa to come through, you do then have the legal rights to reside in the country up until the visa is issued from the submission date. So then, other than that, yeah, we don't physically need you in Portugal at any time until this stage here, until the biometrics appointment is booked. And that won't be realistically until around at least 12 months after we've submitted your application. Everything up until that date is done remotely. Any original documents that we need, we shall send a courier to your home address. But all the meetings, all paperwork is done digitally. And yeah, there's no trips to the local embassy as you need to with other visa types. It's just one appointment in Portugal, which will be a very boring day. And just to give you a heads up, it's going to be the worst day of your holiday to Portugal, but an important day nonetheless. And we will be there to accompany you, to help you with translation, and to ensure that you're fully prepared on the day. But once we've had the biometrics, shortly thereafter, we shall receive the visa card. Which isn't golden for reference. I always used to think it was actually a golden card. I was quite disappointed when it was quite a dull looking card, but nonetheless, it carries golden benefits with it, and it is, of course, the time of which you then have rights to the healthcare system and the education system when that comes through. So again, hope that's nice and clear. A bit of a busy slide, but this is all that happens. This is all managed by Holborn on your behalf, but it's just to give you an idea of what to expect behind the scenes. And then lastly, we're on the straight and narrow. Then we're on the straight and narrow to then working through the visa period up until when we can apply then for your permanent residency and or citizenship in Portugal. Now, as a quick recap, it will take approximately 3 months to submit your application, which includes the tax numbers, your bank account, the document collection, the investment, and the submission of the application. The time to receive the visa card does vary. It does vary. The fastest that we have seen it this year is 6 months, but on average, we would set your expectations at around 12 to 18 months for new applications from this point. The visa will last for 2 years. So in around about 3 years from now, you will have the first visa renewal. In around about 5 years from now, you'll have the second visa renewal. And on the basis that you have passed an A2 language exam by that point, or you've done the minimum number of hours study, which is 150 hours. If you don't want to do the exam, you can do 150 hours study instead. Slightly more expensive to do that option, but you can have it as a backup option, but you need to have one of those 2 routes completed to have the certificate in order for us to submit your application for permanent residency and your passport. But that's it. Oh, and also to keep a clean criminal record. That is, of course, a bit of a giveaway, but all being well, if you can do those things, we shall do the rest, and then you can look forward to permanent rights and citizenship, and formally, that is then mission complete. Once you have the European passport, you're then able to live or work in any European country, and not just Portugal. So Portugal, again, in my humble opinion, is the best part of Europe. I can say that now because England is no longer part of Europe, and I would get a shot if they were for saying that. But Portugal is maybe the place that you settle. However, if you do decide to relocate to Spain or France or Italy, all of these things can be done with the Portuguese passport. So on that note, I'm just going to take a quick breather. I'll have a sip of water. Thank you for your questions so far. What I will do before jumping in to some questions is I'm going to work through the last few slides. I'm going to talk specifically now around the investment categories and what you need to know. What are the laws and the key facts to qualify with one of the investment categories. The donation routes don't really require a lot of information, to be fair. If you do wish to make a donation, then again, the service is exactly the same. However, the money is donated rather than invested. And also, if you wish to set up a business and employ staff, it's not for your average man in the street, but if you do wish to extend a business or create a business in Portugal, again, we can help you with the legal advice needed to set up that company. But for me this evening, we're just going to cover off the investment routes, and of course, any questions that you have as we go through, drop them in, and we shall try and cut them all off. I'll cut them off and answer the questions. Okay, so investing in Portugal. Now, you can invest. There is no restrictions from the government as to which industries that you invest into. These are some of the more prominent sectors for the country of Portugal, if you wish. But you can invest however you like into any industry. There is no restrictions on where the money goes from that angle, if you wish. It is, of course, important to make sure that you don't jump in 2 feet first before understanding the investment that you choose. I'm probably preaching to the choir, as it were, but if we were to take the Golden Visa out of the equation, fair to say for the vast majority, you probably wouldn't be thinking of investing €500,000 into Portugal right now. And that's not to say that Portugal is a bad place to invest. However, the financial system here is arguably not quite as robust as the likes of the US or the UK or other parts of the world, for that matter. And it is very important that the Golden Visa does not end up costing you €500,000 because of a bad investment decision or holding money with unknown entities in Portugal with a view to simply qualify for a visa. So as part of what we do, we will ensure that you have, first of all, a clear breakdown of any funds that are of interest or any investments, and to run through in detail exactly what the risk is that the investment carries, what security that you have for the capital in case of a worst case scenario, but also understand things like fees. Portuguese investments can be quite expensive compared to other parts of the world. There can be penalties sometimes for making withdrawals before a certain time. Some funds in Portugal would have penalties for withdrawals for a lot longer than what you actually need the investment for. What else? Things like the investment returns. Investments come in all different shapes and sizes, as I'll give some commentary on shortly. But understand, what the returns are. What is the history? Is there a history? Things like this. If you are investing as a US citizen as well, important to understand if the investment is compliant for use as a US citizen, because due to the US laws, all investments that you hold overseas must be reported back to the US. And not all fund managers or investment providers have the facility or the desire to do that, which can make things very difficult when it comes to tax time. So there's a lot of things to factor in, and again, as part of our service, we'll ensure that whatever investments that you make, whether it's one that you found yourself or whether it is one with one of our trusted fund managers, then yes, we will make sure you have a clear breakdown of exactly what you're getting yourself in for. There are some rules to follow. If you do choose, first of all, from the investment funds or venture capital funds, there are really 4/5 rules to abide by in order for the fund to qualify. Now, in the universe, there are tens of thousands of funds, of course, to choose from. However, there's a very, very small list by comparison of funds that will meet the Portuguese government's requirements for a visa. And they must follow the following rules. So first of all, the fund has to be approved and regulated in Portugal by the CMVM, which is the regulatory body here in Portugal. The fund cannot directly or indirectly invest into real estate, which came into effect back in 2023. The fund itself must invest predominantly into Portugal, with at least 60% of the money staying in Portugal. So, for example, you couldn't have a Portuguese fund that tracks the US stock market, for example. Likewise, you couldn't have a UK fund that invests into Portugal. The fund has to be a Portuguese fund and predominantly investing into the country. The minimum investment is €500,000, and best practice is to ensure that you can stay invested until you no longer need the investment. And the ideal cutoff point is, of course, when you have permanent rights to Portugal, where there's no further renewals needed. So again, choosing an investment, it is important to make sure that it's not going to mature too early. For example, you don't want to be left with no investment and no permanent residency, because that will invalidate your ability to renew the visa. Likewise, you don't want to be necessarily tied into an investment for the next 10 years when you're going to have the permanent rights in half that time. So Again, more best practice that one, but yeah, that's the ideal timeline for an investment. Investment funds, as a kind of a bird's eye view, come in all different shapes and sizes. Portuguese funds look and feel the same as most funds around the world, but of course they are regulated in Portugal. And again, to qualify for the visa, they are restricted as to which countries that they can invest into. There has to be at least 60% of the fund that stays in Portuguese securities. But there's a variety of investment funds and different fund managers to choose from, ranging from low risk investments to high risk. Naturally, the investment risk that you choose to take derives more often than not the investment returns. Fees can vary. Again, some funds have no fees at all. Some fund managers will charge up to 3% as an initial subscription fee. Management fees can be anything from no management fee at all to 3% per year in the worst case scenario. Majority, again, depending on risks, some funds target over 10% per year, some funds target over 15% per year. Again, ultimately depends on the investment risk that you wish to take, very similar to the funds that perhaps you're investing into already. If, like I would say, the majority investors, you don't feel too confident maybe necessarily investing into the Portuguese stock market, or you've not done it before, or it's going to give you sleepless nights of watching the Portuguese stocks over the next 5 or 6 years, then you may prefer to have something with a fixed return that isn't correlated to performance or to the stock markets. For something with a fixed return, you would expect something around about 4% per year. But of course, you don't ride the waves of the value going up as well as down during that time. But all options are open. Naturally, when we discuss investment options during one-to-one meetings, I can introduce you to credible and well-known fund managers with different investment funds to choose from. And yeah, of course, we can answer any questions that you have on that aspect. For reference, you don't pay Holborn for managing any capital. Any investments are done directly with the fund manager. We will introduce you to the fund manager. Any fees that you pay are only those for the fund manager themselves. We're not tied to any particular provider. You have access to all funds as long as they qualify. We will check that the fund that you've chosen does qualify. And ensure that you have a full breakdown of what's involved with that investment. Okay, so that's the investment funds. Oh, as a quick example, this is how a typical Portuguese equity fund may look. One particular popular fund at the moment is one that invests collectively across different sectors, as you can see, across fintech, AI, and healthcare. It is actually Portugal's largest fund manager, the biggest fund manager, which might shock some people. The biggest fund manager in Portugal manages 4.5 billion euros. If you compare that to the biggest fund managers in the likes of the US or the UK, you can kind of get an idea for the differences between Portuguese funds and those held internationally. However, yeah, 4.5 billion is not too much to be sniffed at by any means. Again, the fund manager has been around for over 30 years. And the minimum capital with any equity fund is 500,000 euros. It targets 10 to 14% per year as an average. It can be less, it can be more. But as an average, the fund targets double figures and has a history of achieving that average return. So you can use that information to gather the likelihood of it continuing to achieve those returns in the future. But again, there's one example. Equity funds will come in different shapes and sizes, but this is a very general example. If we look at the other investment category, shortly we'll come on to some questions as well. But the other investment category is to invest directly with a Portuguese company or invest into private equity, should I say, where the company will create jobs or maintain jobs as a result of your investment. And the rules are as follows. To qualify with this route, the company must maintain at least 10 jobs or create 5 new jobs for a minimum of 3 years. So, for example, you couldn't just invest into a company and qualify for the visa. That company has to then provide evidence that those jobs will be maintained or created as a result. Again, the same rule applies around real estate. The company cannot invest into real estate. The investor has to invest into shares of at least the 500,000 euros, which we've covered. And again, best practice is to ensure you can remain invested throughout the visa period until you have permanent rights, at which time you're then free to withdraw the capital because there's no more visa renewals. And again, as an example of private equity, and the most commonly requested one that I find myself talking about, which has been the way for some time now, is one that invests into the hospitality sector of Portugal. And it's also an example of an investment with a fixed return instead of something that's correlated with the stock markets. But you can invest directly into a hospitality company in Portugal, namely the Navigator collection. For reference, there's a few other variations of this type, but this particular one is with a company called the Navigator collection, and the return is paid up front. You get basically 6 years return as one big lump sum, which comes to 101,000 euros. That's payable to the investor at the outset, and should you wish, it can actually be used towards the 500,000 to qualify for the visa. So this is one example where the investor would only need to use 399,000 of their own capital instead of the full 500. And there is also a loan option for reference as well, where you can use just 325,000 of your own capital. Just be mindful that if you do use the loan facility, naturally that will eat into the profits of the investment with the interest payable. But in its simplest form, you can invest 399,000. It has a fixed return of 500,000 after 6 years. And that's about it, really. There's some other, obviously, a lot more information to cover, but yeah, it's an example of a private equity investment that will create jobs in Portugal with a fixed return. And also, you do get a complimentary stay in Portugal as well each year. So being a hospitality company, part of the company's role is to manage a portfolio of hotels in Portugal. They do the staff recruitment, they do the gardening, they do the insurances. They do all to do with the management of different hotels. And one of the perks is that they allow investors to stay in one of those hotels for 4 weeks each year, free of charge, as kind of an extra incentive. But otherwise, yeah, again, an example there on private equity. But otherwise, we're going to come up with some questions in a second, conscious of time now, coming up to 1:45 p.m. Just whilst I'm on the topic, we're going to extend the offer to include Portuguese lessons as well. I keep saying I should do this myself, but if you would like to begin the process and you'd like to begin the process sooner than later, the offer is to actually have a free tutor. Holborn will actually pay for a private tutor to pass your A2 language exam at no extra cost to the standard legal and professional fees. So if you just remind me that you have seen this when we speak on Zoom, I'll make a note, and then that will be added to the application. But yeah, it's a 12-week course, all done online with a private tutor, and yeah, nothing more to add on that one. I've still barely speak a word of Portuguese myself, so yeah, I should take myself up on that same offer. But anyway, other than that, let's finish up. We'll get into some questions. As always, feel free to get in touch. You can check out the microsite there of JS Privé for more details around the Portugal Golden Visa program. And otherwise, yeah, always be sure to check in to speak with an expert. No subliminal messaging there at all. There's just a very handsome picture of me, of course, but I'll be happy to go through any questions that you have on a one-to-one basis. You can scan in the QR code should you wish to request some time. I think we have some availability from next week. For any further information or any questions that you have, you can now log on to www.jsprive.com, where you'll find all the up-to-date news and latest information that you need on moving to Portugal. Thank you much for watching, and we'll speak to you soon.